Can we welcome Esther?
Thank you so much. You don't have to pronounce the H, by the way. Yeah, you don't. It's okay. Everybody does it. It's okay. Hi. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this, like coordinate with the mic and this at the same time, which should be fun. We'll see. Hi, I'm Esther. I'm an illustrator and artist, and I also teach. I teach at Cornish here in Seattle, and I also teach online, and I have in-person classes that I'll share a little bit about with you. So yeah, I was lucky enough to work with you on this street food cafe at Evanston, and I'm gonna go through a little bit of that process, and I'm gonna share a little bit about my sort of creative journey. I'd love to stand up here and tell you about all of my wins and like how I became like this famous illustrator so easily, and got the like 30 under 30 of like How magazine or something like that. But that would like not be true, number one. And number two, I think it's like kind of boring. I think the creative process is something that I am fascinated with, and it's very messy, and it's not linear a lot of times, and it's really interesting and vulnerable. So I'm going to kind of share some of my little struggles and wins with you, and hopefully that you can get a little bit out of what I've learned. I'm going to start off with this guy. So many of you might know him, John Cleese from Monty Python, but he actually talks a lot about creativity, and he's one of my heroes of creativity. And he talks about creativity not being a talent, but a way of operating. So a lot of times we think of ourselves as creative, or some people aren't creative, and who's creative? Are you creative? But I think actually everybody's creative, and I'm going to kind of talk about that in what I go through here. But I think even people who don't think that they're artists really have something innate inside of them that they need to share. So I love this way of operating, and that's something that I'm kind of obsessed with figuring out. So when this is my family. When I was young, my dad, he is like sort of this really creative guy. When I was little, I thought he could do anything. He always was coming up with all these creative solutions, and so I thought he could do anything, and maybe I could do anything creatively. But he was also a minister and a pastor, and we had a lot of rules going on in our family. So I learned also on the other side that, there's a lot of things you cannot do and should not do, right? So here's me and my painting. I love it how like all artists and designers and illustrators, we all like have this painting or this like picture up on our website. Like, oh, look, I'm an artist, and I was an artist back here, and everybody says like, oh, I loved drawing when I was little, but like, everybody does, like, right? Everybody is an artist when they're young. We just sort of forget about that. When we're young, this is, by the way, if you can't tell what this is the rain falling on somebody. So I'm glad that like my parents made notes about that so I could figure out later. But we're free and we're open when we're young. We're like free and creative. We explore. We actually learn by playing, right? So we play and we learn all kinds of things about life, about each other, about ourselves. And that says open mode. There's something on top if you can't read it. So John Cleese actually talks about open and closed mode. There's like two modes that you need to be in when you talk about creativity. And open mode is kind of the first, what you should start with. And I think you should spend like 3/4 of your time in open mode. And so this is where sort of your inner artist lives, that inner child that's like always exploring and finding new things and curious and humorous, finds, fun in things and is playful and receptive and asks those like what if questions. What if this happened? What if I did this? Things like that. So we all kind of start off in that open mode, and then our brain develops, our brain develops and we get this, we start realizing that there's rules and we want to sort of figure things out. We want to draw something that looks like something else, and then we share our work, and people say, oh, well, that doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like. Why is your horse purple? It doesn't even look like a horse, right? And then we sort of like, this inner critic in us sort of takes over. And it's like, well, you shared your work, so you shouldn't do that again, right? Like, you should be very careful about how you share your work. So a lot of people actually shut down. And we live most of our time actually in this mode right now. Like, very few people spend time playing in open mode. So, this was me then. Then this happened. I'm fast forwarding a lot. Then that's me. I'm glad you're laughing because it's ridiculous. Like, if you ever have taken a photography class, most of you that you have this assignment, this like self-portrait assignment. And so that's what this is. There's a reason. And but I had a lot of angst in art school. I was not even young. I was like 30 years old when I went back to school. But I had been like, I was older, so I was like deeply into that like closed mode, right? I was like, I'm going to art school. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make money. I'm like, somehow I'm going to make my dreams come true. I'm like really focused, So there was a lot going on, and I had to wake up to sort of a lot of realities, and which my logical brain did not really understand. Like, when the teacher gave us an assignment and I did everything right, and then all these other people didn't follow the assignment and they got A's. They just did whatever they wanted to. So I was like, this doesn't make sense to my logical brain, right? I'm supposed to follow the directions and then, I'm supposed to get A's. So, I mean, that's a reality. These people were probably spent a little bit more time in open mode than I was able to, right? They were like, I don't really care. I'm just going to follow my bliss and do this. So, I spent some time in the bathroom crying. And one time after critique, my friend came over and she said, it's okay. Everybody cries in art school. And I thought, like, that needs to be a t-shirt for sure. I tell my students that sometimes in college if they cry. But I actually like really was hard working. I was really driven. So I actually got a job as a graphic designer, even though I had one design class. And I was a designer for a couple of years, kind of paying the bills, doing wonderful work like this. And then I got really into surface design, creating surface design for products. I went to school in Minneapolis, and Target was headquartered there. So I actually interned at Target doing back-to-school products, which was fun. I also was doing a lot of editorial illustration around Minneapolis, and I illustrated a children's book. So all of those things I did in a couple years in art school. So I was pretty ambitious. And I also made t-shirts and sold them around town. I did learn some other things in art school, like the world's longest ear hair belongs to a man in India. It's like 25 inches long or something like that. Or But I sort of towards the end, I got to learn, a little bit of how I like to work, and I loved practicing lettering and adding texture and travel, doing travel illustrations. So these were the things that sort of piqued my interest. In my senior year, finally got into like digital illustration, and I got hired by American Greetings right out of school, which is in Cleveland. And they are a greeting card company, but they wanted me, since I worked at Target, they wanted me to work on their Target line for gift products. So I got to create a lot of fun gift bags and some stationery that was pretty fun job. But I was starting to get some pretty big illustration jobs. This was for the Colorado Tourism Office. And I did these, they hired me to do, actually, from that map that I showed you that I did in school, they hired me to do this, which they were three really large maps for the different seasons. And like on the back, you could see what there was to do in Colorado and all the different fun things you could do. So it was a great, this was one of my first really awesome projects. And it wrapped around the travel section in the Denver Post. And then I got this job for Frito-Lay, which was a packaging for a POS box. And so again, combining some of my favorite things, food and lettering. And so then I freelanced for a while and taught at Kent State when when I left American Greetings. And then I moved to Seattle and I had to get my hustle on. So I was freelancing for like a lot of local places like Eddie Bauer, doing some of their t-shirts and some surface design for their women's and men's clothing, and some patterns for REI. So I really kind of put into practice the product thing that I was working with a lot. So designing for products. I don't know if you know Compendium, but they're like a great local stationery company. So they were opening, they were getting their products into Target. So they hired me to do a lot of their cards for Target. This is not a local, but I was doing a lot of cards for different designers. And Joanne Fabric. So a lot of really fun designs. And I was doing my own licensing work, so licensing my work for products. So I was hustling a lot in school, and then I was only like 3 or 4 years out of school, and I was probably 4 years. I was pretty burnt out. I tried to find the most horrible pictures of myself here. But yeah, I was very burnt out. I actually stopped illustrating for a couple years. And, I really feel like a big part of being burnt out is continually being in this mode, continually like giving and giving and giving, and thinking about end product and thinking about productivity and thinking about, all of those things, and not diving deeper into what your soul needs and like play and open mode. It's like, why are the companies that, sorry, I didn't mean to point at you. The companies, why are the companies that, are driving their employees just for sales, for production, just like, wanting them to be machines? Why do they have such a high rate of burnout? I honestly believe like, they need to spend more time in open mode. And the companies that are the innovators who are giving, their employees places and space and time to create and to own like their creative ventures and to explore and to find new ways and to create things and make mistakes, right? those are companies, they're trying to actually keep their, that's one of the ways they're trying to keep their employees, and like free Cheetos and like video games and stuff. So I took a job as a creative director for this company called Purple Trail. They're in Bellevue, and they small company. They do, if you've ever seen like Minted, that online, it's like an online party. They create party invites. Like, so we actually redid all their whole website and all of their designs. It was a really, really big job. Pretty fun, but it gave me some time to kind of, actually didn't illustrate for like 2 years. And it gave me some time to kind of step back and think about what I wanted to do. And, I thought, like, I really want to kind of figure out like what is right for me, and a way, that process, that creative process, like how things can become easier for me. And I really have always loved painting, but it again was like kind of stressful for me. Like I would get a canvas, and I would set it up, and I just wouldn't know what to paint. I remember I took a class during this time at Seattle Central, and I had this like really amazing Italian painting teacher, and we were painting from a photograph, and I was painting clouds and from this photograph, and I was just like I just was frozen. Like I couldn't paint this cloud. I didn't want to do it wrong. I was just terrified of painting this cloud. She comes over, and she just says, paint the cloud. Like she just yelled, just paint it. Just yelling at, and that just stuck in my mind, because I mean, like, why was I so scared of that freaking cloud, But so I found this course. It was an online course from this woman, Flora. I highly recommend if anybody wants to get in open mode to do her class, because it was all about following your intuition, not really planning ahead of time, but more getting into that open mode of connecting with yourself and your intuition, and sort of letting yourself be free in the process. So I started creating these paintings, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like me. Like I love, like part of the problem before is I would create this painting, and it would just like it would not be me. It looked horrible. Like I just wasn't happy with it. It would look like somebody else painted it. It just had no emotion or anything to it. And so I would paint these, and I would feel like, wow, it feels like me. So I had to sort of relearn my whole process, and which was really interesting. I love learning, and I hired a creative coach, and she was really intuitive and really smart, and listened to me. And because I said, I have all these different, I have the surface design, I have all these different ways that I could probably make money. But like, I don't know, I want to kind of step back and do it the way that is natural to me, And so she said, you need to start sketching, like just get in your sketchbook and play. Because your sketchbook, like no one has to see it. You can just make mistakes, have fun, be in that open mode, explore. So I spent a lot of time sketching. And has anyone heard of the 100-day challenge, like on Instagram? So I did that. And I challenged myself to do food and lettering. And I went around to like a lot of the restaurants, and I did sketches of some of the food that I ate every day. So again, it like came back to some of the things that I really loved, right? And I also, was finding that actually there were these doodles that like came out of me, these ways that I draw that were like so natural to me, that always kind of came out of me, and they had the same flavor. So that was really interesting. And so I started incorporating a lot of these things into my new work, and kind of put this stuff out there. And a lot of these became the future of it became the beginning of what people have hired me for since. But during this process, I got really curious. I was like, oh man, like this is working for me. And like, what, my critical scientific brain was really going, revving up. And I started finding all these people that were talking about creativity. And they were, showing examples of like experiments that you could do to open yourself up and the process of creativity. So I started really getting interested in the process. Like, how do we make it easier for ourselves to create? How do we, get past that like negative thinking that creeps in or that's like always there? How can we just pause and like make it a little bit easier for ourselves? So again, coming back to this, creativity is not a talent, but a way of operating. I was like, there's got to be a way to like teach people. And I also, I started having, I have so many people tell me all the time, like, I'm not an artist. I wish I could do what you do. I can't even draw a straight line or something, something like that. And it makes me so sad because I really honestly feel like everybody is creative and everybody has like this unique sense of who they are, but we get like this creative block, like this mental, like I have a math block, like I cannot do math. I'm terrified, like literally terrified of it. But a lot of people feel that way about creativity too. So I thought like it would be really interesting to start a class where people could just be free and enjoy it. And I started doing these experiments with my Cornish class because a lot of them are still, it's art school, like very like focused and tight, and they want you, they want you to like what they do. And so I noticed like when we started getting in doing some of these exercises, that it kind of opened them up as well. So I started this Finding Your Creative Voice workshop, which there's one in October if you want to go. But basically, I wanted to have people spend more time in open mode, right? Getting to know who they are as an artist, like getting to know what naturally comes out of them and getting to spend some time exploring in like a safe place. And what I found is that people just are like so relieved to actually have time to spend in their body and like exploring, having fun, and finding like this unique way that they create. And it's kind of amazing how, so we do like these collages, and it's pretty amazing to see just by people doing this and then what comes out at the end, you can see people's style. Like everybody has colors that they love, shapes that they love. Like when I drew in my sketchbook, things that they naturally doodle, all of these things can come out in an artistic setting. And so it's just really interesting when we lay like all the things out, when how everybody's style really comes through, even though, these people say that they're not artists, but it really gives them the freedom to move past that fear. So I came up with this, this way of teaching, and I call it flow. So I'm actually going to walk you through this using the Evanston project because it'll kind of give you an idea of like how I wanted to kind of explain also like how went through the project and how we can practically like put this into use. So the first part is finding inspiration. Actually, you can tell a lot about your inner artist, like who you are uniquely, about what you gather around yourself. So the things that you put in your home, or like when you go shopping, like the things that you get or that you take pictures of, all of those things are unique to you. So finding inspiration is actually a great way to find out who you are creatively and to get back to that. So that's the first step in any project for me, is like going out and finding inspiration that I'm naturally drawn to and inspiration that's out there in the world, right? So these are some of the things that I have gathered, and not everybody would love this type of lettering. Not everybody would love this little sign, but I find it really fun and quirky. So those are the things that make you part of the things that make you uniquely you. Then second, after we go out and find things, want to come back to our own self and who we naturally are as artists or creative people. And that really, a lot of times you have to get back into your body. And I do this, I do a lot of these intuitive drawings with people where you just turn on music and you just sort of let your hand sort of draw how you would doodle or how you would just naturally draw, or just see whatever comes out of you with your brush or your pencil. And it's really fun to see because everybody's different, and it's really hard to get the negative to not have the negative thoughts come in during this process. But the more you do it, the better, the better you'll get at sort of quieting that voice. And it gives you some time to sort of get back into who you are and your body and just sort of relax. You could try coloring too. So coloring is another great way to sort of get into that flow. It actually creates these stress-reducing hormones. Same with this, it creates these stress-reducing hormones, so you get in this sort of state of flow. Another fun way is to do free writing. So you just sort of, it's like stream of consciousness writing, where you just write about a subject, or you can write about the subject that you're working on. And that, again, is sort of bypasses that critical mind. So again, we're trying to keep in that open mode, that state of just openness and exploratory. And then I want to open up to all the possibilities that we have gathered around us. So still staying in that open mode, maybe bringing a little bit of the logical brain in, but trying to be as open as we can. So if you think about brainstorming, you don't want to hinder yourself, or you don't want to really bring that negative voice in yet. You want to have as many possibilities as possible. Because once the negativity comes in, it really quenches that creative spirit. And so we want to just have as many options as possible. So here are some of the little doodles that I did for the project. And another thing is, when you're in this process, have you ever had, when you get in this zone, you ever had those moments where you think what if I combined this with this, or what if it was that color, or what if I did this? That's a crazy idea. Sometimes your logical brain will come in and say that's crazy, but but if you can follow those what if moments, I think Steve Jobs said creativity is just connecting things. It's just connecting all these ideas. So if you're going around and being in the moment and observing things, you're gonna connect things together and make those what if moments make the most amazing creative ideas that are out there right now. So this was kind of one of the first sketches. I'm going to show you some of the ideas that I had for the project. So just combining lettering and food. And I thought, well, what if we made it sort of like a street cart? I had this idea of a street cart in my mind, street food cart. And what if we just turned the whole space into a little cart? How cool would that be? And this could be, the inside of it. And another what if idea I had was, what if we, combined the Seattle element of it and made it sort of a fun Seattle illustration. So finally, at the end, so we really spent 3/4 of the time in open mode, and finally, at the end, it's great to bring that logical thinking back. Like, if you think about critiques, you know, and assessing like what is good, what is bad, what can we save for later, what can we go forward with. So sometimes in this process, you have to go back to the beginning. A lot of times, actually. So when I presented these ideas, what I really love about working with clients is they really push me a lot farther than I can go myself. So they really wanted more of like a street vibe to it. So like a street graffiti, street art vibe, which is really fun. So it pushed me a little bit to go back and create this mood board and try to create more of that kind of vibe going forward, a little bit more of a less like playful, whimsical, and more like street. And so that's what we came up with. And they also wanted more unique food choices, which I thought was really fun. So this was so fun. I can't even tell you. I actually went on Facebook and I asked people what their favorite food from around the world, this favorite street food was, and I got all these cool answers. So, and then we researched how to letter them in their language. And so this is a little mock-up because it's not in there yet, but then Jeremy was like, well, what if we put it on wood? Would that be interesting? So that was a great addition. And yeah, so this is the other side, the left side as you're coming in. And then just some recent projects I want to share. I've been working a lot with a lot of local companies, which has been really great. And oh, I wanted to show you this. So if you notice, this is like similar to some of the sketches that I came up with. And I recently became a part of an illustration collective where 8 of us are banding together from across the country, and we're all illustrators, and we do a monthly challenge. So this was the month, I think it was June. It was picnic. What would your ideal picnic be? So this was my ideal picnic of choosing a little street food and sitting on top of a view and looking over Seattle. So you never know what you can use your process for, right? You never know. So a lot of times we think about the process of play as like a waste of time, a waste of energy, but it's never wasted. You're always growing somehow when you're in that creative process. So I've been doing a lot of stuff for Fred Meyer, which is really fun, doing a lot of surface designs. And this was a bag design for their Main and Vine store. And Design Imports does a lot of home decor. I've been doing a lot of work for them. And these are dish towels with recipes on them. I did about, I think, 6 of them. And Seattle University asked me to do this for their new students. And they actually it's like a little map, which I was so excited to do. I've been dying to do a map of Seattle. and I love Seattle U because so many of my friends work there. And it's really a part of my heart. So it was really fun to do this project. And they're actually using a lot of these graphics for a lot of their promotional materials. So it's really, really fun. This is not a local company, but sometimes I talk to my students about how creating your own work and spending your time in open mode and creating stuff for yourself can lead to other jobs. So the paintings that I do, they're mostly just for myself, but Doris, they found those online and they thought that it would be fun that I would be able to do these color in pages. So these are really long. They're about the size of this table, and they're really long coloring pages where you put it on the table and color in, or you put it on the wall. So I did, can't remember how many I did. I think I did 6 of these too. I did them all on my iPad, which is kind of amazing. So they're really huge. I am really so excited to share this project to Committee for Children. They're actually really close down here. They do second step curriculum, which teaches social and emotional learning to kids. So kids are able to share more of how they're feeling and thinking with their peers. So and it has to do with bullying and all of this kind of thing. So I was really excited to work on this curriculum for them. And then Aladdin is actually close by too. They make those lunch boxes, you know, that you had as a kid. And I have done a lot of lettering for them, really fun stuff, mostly for drink containers that they have. And I'll just end with this quote. So I really believe that spending time cultivating our creativity is not wasted time. It's something that's going to make us more compassionate, have a fuller life, more joyful, and come up with ideas for creating a better future and creating a better lives for ourselves. So I hope that this little talk has maybe inspired you a little bit. That's my goal. And oh, it's cutting it off. So you can follow me. I try to post like things that are going to help you in your creative journey. I also have a sign up over there on that page where you can sign up for my newsletter, and I try to send out little creative tips or like things that are inspiring for you every week. And so yeah, and I also have those classes if you ever want to take one of those. They're really fun. So do we have time for questions? Okay.
Go ahead, Dominic.
Thank you. So yeah, this is really great. I was just wondering, do you think in like the contemporary design world, is this like a particular style of art where you, I mean, is there a name to it where you have like illustrations and then text in there? Because I've seen like a few more of such designs. So I was just wondering if this is something that you came up with on your own, or is this like a style that is pre-existing that you tried to, like make yourself?
I can turn that on.
I have been doing this since I was little. I hate saying that because everybody says that. But I really remember being in church and like drawing these little characters that were food, and they were like little food characters. And then I like to letter whatever they were, like the names of them. And then when I was in art school too, I just loved combining lettering and illustration all the time. So yeah, I feel like, I think that it's pretty popular now. And I think some people call it maybe illustrative lettering, or something like that. But yeah, does that answer your question?
I also thought it was interesting when we shot the Google video, we were having to pretend like we were drawing. And we had a conversation when you're just forced to just sit there and draw, what do you go to? What's your go-to? And she started drawing characters and I was drawing geometric shapes, but it aligned with what you were talking about.
Yes, I had a quick question. Do you think the structure of corporate America was leading to your burnout? And because I'm like, you said you got burnt out after being in like.
Well, I didn't want to bring that up, but um, I may not be cut out for corporate America. I don't know. I think it might also be where you work because some of the places um, were not necessarily, open to more of a creative um, exploration and ownership. So I think that probably led to a lot of it. And plus, I think like I was always trying to do like my side gig, so I was like doing both at the same time. But I think it can be both. I think it can be empowering, and it can also be, can also lead to burnout, definitely. And I think it has a lot to do with how it's structured and leaders. I think like leadership has a lot to do with it. Everybody I like talk to who's a designer, it's always like whenever they switch teams, it's like they're nervous because like if they have a really great team, it feels like very empowering, and then if they don't, it's just like soul sucking. So yeah.
Hi, what's your go-to way of doing a quick visualization of what you really want to use in the end? Like, what's the tool that you use to kind of give you a good idea? Like, okay, this is what I want to do. Like, do you just do outlines, or do you do outlines plus painting? What's like your quick tool?
Are you talking about painting?
Any work. Like, what's like your step one to get a quick visualization?
Yeah, I think sketching, like in my sketchbook, I do a lot of stuff digitally, but I really find that I'm like coming back to my sketchbook, and I tell my students like start in your sketchbook, because somebody told me once when you actually start in a program, you're limited by the program. If that makes sense, you're like in a box. So if you start like on paper, then you're just like you're not limited by anything. Yeah. So I'll do like a very loose, and a lot of times, like I was working on a project this week and I was like, I was in that, I couldn't get out of that critic mode. So I just like turned on the music and I just like was in the coffee shop, intuitive drawing and jamming, and people must have thought that I was crazy, but I came out with some stuff that I really liked. So I went and did some intuitive drawing, and then I did some really loose sketching, and my sketches are really bad. Like they're usually I didn't show you any of the really but you know what? Okay, if you haven't been to the Muppets, the Jim Henson at the Mopop, you should go, because I went through that exhibit that's at the Mopop right now, and I couldn't stop smiling. I literally could not stop smiling through the whole thing, and I realized that his sketches are just as bad as mine, and and I didn't feel so bad. So
I was just wondering, how did we meet you? What's the story of coming on to Evanston?
yeah, where did you find me?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was, looking back on it, it was some Instagram, some word of mouth. I think we went on, there's a couple artist collective sites for Seattle artists to partner with. Yeah, just chance. And I would maybe argue that pencil and paper is still limiting. So maybe you have to work in all mediums simultaneously. I don't know.
What sort of classes do you offer? And are they like one-time classes? Are they like at a college? How would we sign up for them? All of that.
So I'm October 21st, I'm teaching one of the in-person classes in Greenwood. And that's like an all day, it's like some of the pictures that I showed you. We do finger painting and we do collage and we do like painting at the end, like a whole big painting. And it's really, really fun and explorative. And so that's on the 21st. So I usually do that every couple months. And then it's really fun to take like with people too, like with your friends, because a lot of people take it with their friends and they just, it's really fun to see like the interaction of everybody getting to know themselves and getting to know each other. And then I have actually that class online, so you can take it online as well. I just started a hand lettering course, which is like a week-long online course, and it's like sort of interactive. So I give you the first part of the hand lettering, and it's sort of in this same vibe where you're like you're not like copying somebody or I don't want anybody to just like copy my style. So I'm trying to help you in this process to find your own. And so we sort of go through this process with hand lettering, and then halfway through we meet online with a Zoom meeting online, and then share like our process, and you ask questions and things like that. And then at the end we share our work in a Zoom meeting as well. And then I have like a Facebook group where you can interact and share your work. So it's a lot of fun. I just did it last week, so it was really interesting because a lot of the people, I was really nervous because a lot of the people were my friends, and they were a lot of them were illustrators. And I was like, do I have anything to share with these people? I mean, the whole time it was really interesting too, because like I really had to trust this process and that things were going to happen, because my critical brain was just going a mile a minute. And people just loved it. I mean, they were like, I never get time to play. I never get time to find, like, just explore and find out what is really what I'm all about, So that's like the biggest thing that, I heard. And that, yeah, so that one I'm going to do in November, the beginning of November again. Yeah, you can go to estherloopstra.com, and then I have a place for classes, and if you just scroll down. Also, if you sign up for my newsletter, let me get a pen. If you sign up for my newsletter, I send out little reminders about all that stuff too. Did you have another question?
I know here at DLR, we've talked about process. I was wondering if you keep some of your process when you're coming up with the final, option or design.
Do you mean like the sketches that I shared, like that kind of process? Mm-hmm. Like, do I share it on my site, or just keep? Yeah, I do keep a lot of the process. Yeah, especially like all of the inspiration that I find, and like the sketches. Like, you never know what you're going to use the sketches for in the future, So there's always ideas there for other things. So I think that it's like really important. And my process is really messy, so like a lot of it I don't share. But yeah, I think it's important to keep all of that, because it just keep it in a file or in your brain where you can access it again. Yeah.
I have one last question for you too. That you were originally, before we were going to do this on Zoom, you had asked if we could all do, and I was just curious what that was going to be, what the activity.
This might be more asking for advice, but being a creative person, a creative types, like a lot of us tend to be perfectionists about what we do. And like, even if we're doodling, it's got to be a perfect doodle. because you don't want to show anything that looks, ugly or mistakes, as you're saying. Like, so how do you kind of get that out of your head and kind of get that mentality of like, yeah, this is an ugly sketch, or this is stupid, or whatever you're drawing, and just keep going with it versus like, okay, crumble it up, throw it away, start over because it wasn't perfect.
Draw the cloud yelling.
I know that is so hard. That's like the hardest part, I think. I'm a perfectionist too, but it's like hard for me to admit that. So I think, when that a sketchbook is a great way, first of all, because you don't have to share it with anybody. But practicing, like doing it a lot and not getting frustrated with yourself is really hard. But if you just know that, like, so I did like a whole article about how to work with your inner critic. And it takes a lot of practice, but your inner critic is like there to help you. It's not like the bad guy, right? I mean, it gets a lot of stuff done, but if you like just pause and like kind of consciously talk, I know this is like really therapy, like woo-woo therapy, but if you talk to that part of yourself and just be like, look, I'm taking some time for myself, for my inner artist part, and like I really appreciate you, but can you just like give me 5 minutes, doing that, like, and then maybe like it's like a minute longer and a minute longer, and you just get, and just seeing like what you do like noticing what you do like about what you've done, I think is really helpful too. And really what you see is not what other people see, because like this class that I did, I was like, oh, it's crap, like it's total crap, and everybody was just raving about it. So really, and one other good thing is using coloring books, starting off with a coloring book, because it gives you that same feeling, but like you don't have to think you don't have to think too much. But I did have one student who was like, I can't even choose a color, like I'm going to choose the wrong color, but yeah, it takes a lot of practice to just like take some time out and just like appreciate the inner critic, but then give yourself the time, which is really, it's hard to give yourself that time and to not think of it as wasted time, but try to think of it as like something that you're giving yourself. Like if you had a kid and your kid was like, I want to go play, you wouldn't be like, no, you have to do this. And that is like so not practical. You want the kid to play, right? You wouldn't talk to yourself. I mean, you wouldn't talk to your kid like that, like how you talk to yourself, So think about it that way too. Do you want me to answer your question? Okay, so I asked Jeremy like if we had like places to do an exercise, but he said no, or he said there isn't. Yeah, it's not really practical. But I thought maybe we could I do exercises in the classes, like there's just a variety of different exercises that I do. One of them is like the intuitive drawing, and then one of them, so you could practice that at home. Just like go home and put on your favorite song and just doodle and let yourself kind of have fun with it. And then another one is you have like a sketchbook or like a piece of paper, and then you just do like a 30-second or like a 5-second something, like a line drawing, and then you like pass it to your neighbor, and then your neighbor, does something on it. And it sort of gets you out of that mode. It's like, one, it's timed, so you're not thinking too much. And then two, somebody's like marking up your stuff. So it kind of gets you out of that mode of like, oh no, I've got to, I'm so protective of this thing, this beautiful creation that I'm working on. So yeah, those are a couple fun things. Yeah.
Well, thank you, and thank everybody.